You're going to see a little live icon in a minute.
Does live mean they hear me or just you?
Oh, they see us both right now.
Okay.
Hello, everyone. Here we are at 3:01, getting better all the time. And I have my good friend, actually, we went to medical school together, sort of, Dr. Ingrid Solomon from Trinidad, Tobago, and your Danish part, and you're now living in Florida.
Right.
What were the original three things you wanted to talk about? You wanted to talk about anxiety, and then sciatica,
Weight loss.
weight loss. Yeah. To me, it's all one topic. And this is going to be so marvelous that then you went and looked in my blogs and chose anxiety, hormones, and flow, which is really a whole article about connection, which is, the research is showing that the single most significant variable in well, not well, is a person's support system and also connection, like nourishing connection with other people, because I mean, the research is showing that that's the number one variable in addiction, whether or not people actually are able to recover, because it's an essential nutrient like air and water to humans, and we haven't recognized that for a long time. So we live quite isolated, and that's a source of massive issues, especially in the context of this social distancing business, right? Which has massive health implications. And then I was actually talking to the governor's wife the other day, and Jennifer Newsom, and we were talking about how really it should be called physical distancing, not social distancing, and what we need more of. That was my idea. So if she comes out with that, if the governor comes out with that, that was my idea. But it's an obvious idea. It's actually not really my idea. And so, in the context of what is everyone experiencing now? Well, severe anxiety. I'm actually not having anxiety, but I'm an unusual person in that regard because I have a lot of resourcing skills and I look at challenges as a way to practice resourcing more deeply. I actually look at everything difficult as, I'm not religious per se, but God saying, okay, now can you handle this? Now what are you made of? Like we're all athletes training at altitude and having to up our game on a constant basis. Are you with me,
Yeah.
people?
Yeah.
Awesome. So, um, all right, I'm gonna riff a little bit because I can I can go in all sorts of different directions, and then maybe as specific questions come up, or like, can we go more in this direction, you can actually interrupt me, although I'll try to give you space as well.
Okay.
Like, for instance, right now, is there anything you want to add or say about yourself? You are working on the front lines in a sense,
Yes, I'm in
right?
urgent care. Hmm.
Hmm.
And those are topics that I see very often that seems to cross all ethnicity, age, gender, culture. The
Hmm.
sciatica, the weight gain, and now especially I find anxiety almost, it's just right through every day.
Okay. So let's talk about, as an entry point, it's perfect you went there, because from an osteopathic point of view, and I treat people with my hands, right? Ingrid and 95-ish% of DO trained physicians, osteopathically trained physicians, don't necessarily choose to specialize in osteopathic medicine. Maybe they dabble a little bit and they could help someone with a headache, but it's like, and I don't actually know how much manual medicine you do, but you kind of have to do it to be good at it, like music,
Yeah.
right? So, like, we all studied recorder in fourth grade, but that doesn't make us musicians. But it's not to say we couldn't hold a tune if we needed to. Okay, anxiety and sciatica. So when we're feeling overwhelmed by the world, and just because we sit a lot, we tend to do this thing where we kind of slump and we collapse our body And I started out talking about osteopathic medicine because what I find when people are anxious, they set in their body in this forward folded way that actually quite crowds their breathing, and it quite locks up their abdominal diaphragm, right? And we all know how important breathing is to relaxing, but I'm going to get real specific here because, and then while we're crowded forward, like we're in a forward C, the hip flexors, the biggest skeletal muscle in the body, they shorten. And what happens is that whole complex kind of does this, and it's almost like in psychology, we know that this is the protective fight or flight kind of overwhelm. You know, it's classic. And in research, this posture is associated with anxiety and depression. And when like you have... What's that?
It's like the fetal position.
Exactly. It's protective. Firstly, it's protective, and then it's fainting and like playing dead. So it can go to different extremes. But very, very, very specifically. And then you look in the Feldenkrais world, and they call the psoas the fight or flight muscle. Now, there's more research going into this, but once you get into this forward collapse, shortened, it's like you're crowding around your heart, really is how I see it. You start to drag on the diaphragm. It can't really move the same way anymore. The diaphragm, breathing all the way down, allows that huge muscle at the bottom of the rib cage. It starts out like this with an exhale. Inhale. And the kidneys are right behind it in the retroperitoneal space. They're not in the gut sac. They're not in the visceral cavity. They're outside, and they're right behind the diaphragm. And that rhythmic, inhale, exhale is a massage on the kidneys. Kidney, renal, adrenal. The adrenal glands are right there. And so if we're not allowing the kidneys to do this real-time massage every minute of the day, what happens, and I feel this, I get in there and the kidneys are doing this like puckery kind of thing where they're actually in spasm almost. They can feel really dense, and then you feel this like chargy kind of triggery state where they're firing off excess adrenal epinephrine. Is that adrenal? Does adrenaline translate to epinephrine directly?
I think so.
Yeah. So
adrenaline is epinephrine.
Yeah, same molecule.
Right.
So what happens then is we actually are mechanically inducing an anxiety simply from sitting and not breathing, sitting in a collapsed way. So it's also, it's really interesting because you take that to an extreme and then people literally start to have panic type symptoms and they become very kind of separate. When we go back to like connection, heart open, parasympathetic activity actually is this. The back body, the posterior muscles activate and we can be tall and commanding and, like able to kind of manage things. This is why we teach leaders and, to be upright, because otherwise you have no impact. You disappear. People don't listen to you. Like I do this little joke. Imagine you're a dictator and you're all crumpled up and you're like, Go invade that country, guys. It's like no one's going to listen to you. I have a funny cartoon in my head around that. So what happens then, getting on to the more of the hormones in the body. Oh, so two things, very specific things. So we go into panic. The being, the person, this is a sympathetic state actually in our minds in terms of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We begin to see just ourselves. We're in survival mode. We don't give a rat's ass about other people. So connection isn't even relevant in this place, right? We think only of ourselves. Our vision literally goes into this tunnel and we stop even seeing that we're a part of something larger. The interesting thing about that is, my friend Shiva says she's online, Chevy. I forgot to check the Facebook, folks. That's so not like me. And then we see if anyone's like, So no comments yet so far. That's okay. And oh no, there's tons of comments. Absolutely, social distancing is totally the wrong name. And then Michael says, my motivation is awesome. Thank you. Oh my God, Cami Renee is on. Dr. Cami, I'm a huge fan. And then Suzanne Astor is watching, and also Kathleen Evans says she can't stay, but can we send the replay? The replays stay right here in the study group. So if you're not in it, I think you're in it because you're on. Then you can always come back and listen later.
Okay.
So what?
No, I said okay. So I can listen later.
I'm trying to stay, anyway, lots of details in this information, and yet it's really so basic. So let me slow down a little bit. So we're in this tunnel vision, and then what do we tell people to do? We say breathe into a paper bag. And that has the same effect as slowing your breathing down. And because the carbon dioxide accumulates in the bloodstream, if we're hyperventilating and breathing shallowly, we lose carbon dioxide. And you know that the carbon dioxide levels are the motivator of the breath mechanism, and we start to just dissociate. We also start to have less efficient delivery of the blood of our blood of our red cells of oxygen to the tissues, because the carbon dioxide is necessary to unload the oxygen at the level of the tissues. It's also a vasodilator. So the whole body starts to kind of shrink wrap. And it's a progression. It's like a snowball effect. So if you want your patient or yourself, and last little piece, the whole body's doing this forward crowding. The psoas is getting short. Those are the big muscles that lift the leg, the hip flexors. And then you stand up. The muscles are short. They take the vertebra, right? Because that muscle, the psoas, attaches L2-3 right below the diaphragm. It further drags on the diaphragm. That tight psoas locks up the diaphragm even more, and then also because the muscle spans the top of the lumbar down to the front of the leg, it takes the lumbar vertebra and smashes them together. That was very dramatic. It smashes them together. It shortens the whole lumbar area, and it has the effect of squishing the discs, the soft discs between the vertebra, so they begin to impinge on the peripheral nerves and the sciatic bundle at the bottom of the lumbar spine.
So would you say if you're in a pseudo panic attack, that sitting is better than standing?
I would say putting the body in neutral, maybe. But I would also say find someone to regulate your ass. Like you have to have a not panicked person holding a more regulated autonomic state, like grab you to ground you and to have you're no longer, it's like you're a computer with the pinwheel spinning. But we each are able to borrow each other's, we co-regulate. That's what mammals do. That's what animals do. So unless a person is connection adverse, where some people are so dissociated from intimacy that actually being connecty can not be so comfortable. So it's a little bit about reading into the person and putting them in a comfortable position, making them warm, putting a hot water bottle on their kidneys, because you got to open this up and get the blood flow going right in there. Would I say some oxygen would help? Slowing the breath helps. Holding the breath helps, because the carbon dioxide will start to build immediately in the blood and start to open things up, right? That vasodilation effect. Don't breathe through the mouth, because then you're hyperventilating, you're getting the carbon dioxide is getting wasted. And we typically overbreathe when we're in, my friend just started his car right outside my window. It's loud, his car. It's okay. hyperventilation, breathing through the mouth is pretty much a no-no all the time, right? You don't have the protection of filtering the air through the nose, warming it. Also, there's carbon dioxide retained in here that'll add to the vasodilation effect. And the really wonderful thing is we have nitric oxide produced here in the sinuses that we will get to take advantage of if we breathe through our noses. So breathing through your nose actually gives you a gas mixture that's also much more calming. It's actually sedating. Nitric oxide and carbon dioxide both calm the nervous system quite a bit. So your anxious person will need to fit into, I teach people all the time, like I started to teach my patients, like if you're going to do, maybe they're in crisis, they're in pain, they're having anxiety, I tell them, okay, let's start to wake up the spine. Let's definitely not sit in a hole. Let's start to, I'm thinking though, like if their hip flexors are really, really, really tight, sitting up straight might make it worse. So you want to find the sweet spot where they're in neutral as much as you can. Typically that does happen when the hips are a little higher than the knees, like in yoga when they give us a blanket. However, if you, let's say you have a person who's in an acute anxiety and you may be seeing them in your urgent care, you probably want to lay them on their side in a place where they feel safe without lights right in their face. And, you know, ask them what they want. Do you want, you know, sometimes putting some weight on their legs will start to help them be grounded, but they may not be comfortable with that. So you can say, is it comfortable if I do this? Typically pressure on the body, right? Like those weighted blankets that help people sleep, because it's like a swaddle. It kind of literally grounds the nervous system. And then have them breathing through their nose for exclusively. So two things about that. If they can't breathe through their nose, they have to breathe through their mouth, but there's actually a technique that you can use to unblock a nose 95+% of the time, resolve congestion, which was really news to me, but it came out all of this research in Russia by a doctor named Konstantin Buteyko. I have to let my cat out here. Excuse me, folks. Come here, kitty. So, I feel like I'm kind of talking really quickly. I'm thinking if I don't talk fast, I won't be able to get in all the important bits.
The Russian.
So,
thing that you're gonna block.
Exhalation. Oh yeah, the unblocking of the nose, and then the part where exhalation is a Valsalva maneuver. Exhalation is a parasympathetic effect.
Okay.
So you want to have, and do this for yourself, start to slow your breath down and then breathing through the nose, and then just see if you can extend your exhalation a little bit. You don't want to effort too much, just a little bit of attention to the breath, slowing it down, paying a little bit of extra attention to extending the exhalation phase. And every instant that we spend doing these things, imagine like we're turning down the fight or flight one little bit with each moment that we're putting our attention on these things. So it's not like flipping a switch, we're out of the state. We're kind of reeling the nervous system back in moment by moment. And then the nose clearing thing. I'm going to put a little video, a link to this down below when we're done, so people can revisit this technique, but it's essential. I teach nasal breathing as like one of the pillars of basic health that's free and do it yourself. I did a whole hour lecture just on nasal breathing recently for OMED, the biggest osteopathic medical conference of the year. And most of the doctors had no idea what they like. I had no idea. I had no idea of all the effects of nitric oxide through the bloodstream and how, optimizing this proper gas mixture by nasal breathing affects every organ in the body. And affects sleep apnea. Like if we can actually get enough nitric oxide, will begin to remodel the tissues in the airways and create more space. Believe it or not.
No, wow, that's good to know.
It's a big one. There's actually erectile tissue in the nasal passages. So the air mixture will start to remodel the tissues, change the shape, create more patency, openness, more space for air to get in. So the nasal breathing technique, say you can't breathe through your nose, is to exhale all the way. Maybe it's inhale all the way. I think it's exhale all the way. And then you do 6 times, look up at the ceiling, pinching your nose. It might be 8 times. Yeah, I think it was inhale, pinch, 6 times, exhale, breathe normally for 1 or 2 cycles, and then do it again 2 or 3 times. And by the end of that, and I actually already feel more relaxed. I got some carbon dioxide from doing that. By the end of that, it's ridiculously statistically amazing how quickly your nose will clear even if you have a cold.
Right? Very cool. You'll put that video up after?
Yeah, I'm going to put that video up. And like in terms of, being safe and not picking up viruses and such, you do not want to be breathing through your mouth anywhere, but most certainly not in a medical environment because you have no protection, right? And someone said, well, you don't get COVID through your mouth. It doesn't matter. Your lung tissues, the airway has to be able to defend itself, period. It has to not be inflamed and, dried out and that sort of thing. So, any questions? I have another topic, but I'm just going to breathe for a second.
No, that was fabulous. I look forward to seeing that video. I'm really curious to see if that works.
All right. So let's talk about hormones specifically. So we got into this. Sitting is kind of puts the kibosh on the adrenaline system, right? You can induce anxiety and increase your stress and decrease your brain function. You're going to limit blood flow to the brain, and you're going to flip the body into the biochemistry of fight or flight just by collapsing in your chair. So I think quickly I'll just walk through, like, what do you do instead? Well, right now I'm sitting on the right chair for me allows my hips to be a little higher than my knees. I've got these awesome wedges on the links on my website. I don't sell them. I don't make any money. It's just the big, nice, thick foam one that doesn't collapse. Memory foam doesn't do anything. And then I'm feeling my toes touching the ground. Sometimes I'll rub my foot inside my shoe to activate the whole pathway down. And you remember, this is like extension here. So this is a parasympathetic effect of the toes. Gripping the toes can start to stimulate the parasympathetics, wake up the afferent pathways in the back of the body that start to ping the tailbone, where the hub, a big parasympathetic hub under the sacrum, can start to wake up. Mm-hmm. And then getting that, I do a little pelvic floor, deep abdominal activation to kind of, like we learn in yoga and Pilates, like allow the spine, allow the whole trunk of the body to start to activate, like core, coordinated, engage the power of the body, which starts to actually stimulate the life force circulation. And then tongue on the roof of the mouth. Necessary for nasal breathing. Well, not necessary, but the contact is actually quite critical to stimulating the parasympathetic nervous system. Tongue covering the whole roof of the mouth. We just did a whole show on tongue. It's a lot. I won't go into it.
Yeah, that's fine.
Right now. Exactly. And then I imagine like a cord from the crown of my head reaching up. So right, everything in yoga, life is yoga if you're living the natural way. Everything I talk about, everything yoga talks about is creating more space and length versus this collapsy thing. Mm-hmm. How do we kind of reverse that and exist in a way where we're not training the body to shrink wrap. We're training it to expand. Mm-hmm. And so I think I did a whole show on sitting last week. That's on there too. But I write a blog posts that are on my website on each one of these topics summarized, so they're easy to return to. So my patient who has anxiety, pain, I say do these three things. Sit in a way that starts to unfold you consciously with enjoyment, right? Don't force it. I have to be long, because your butt, that might be stressful too. It's like, where's the sweet spot of relief and enjoyment, and feeling a bit more. Paying attention has us start to feel more connected, right? Connection starts really with yourself, or if you can't start it with yourself, ask someone to sit on you. I'm literally saying, like, sit. Sometimes in clinical settings, if I see someone, like I unlock something in their body on the table and they're kind of getting like activated, I will just put my weight on them and wait for the whole thing to pass, like a weather pattern. They just need to be anchored. So don't underestimate the power of that. And then I tell them, right, sit in a way that starts to allow the body to really breathe fully from head to toe, as in primary respiration as well, right? Because this collapsing is also locking up the craniosacral mechanism, which you and I both studied in school, and many of the people listening in, like Suzanne, and maybe Cami, kind of know about as a thing. Like, what is this deeper breath that's even more relevant and impactful than the thoracic breath? The whole body breathes. The whole body's doing an expanding and contracting action all the time, unless it's not. Right? So the pelvic floor, thoracic diaphragm, and then the cranial diaphragm are actually the membranes of the head. And then it's a beautiful thing when I'm like a mechanic, I'm tuning people up, and that's what I do osteopathically. Eventually, you'll watch the whole body breath action, the primary respiration, synchronize with the secondary respiration. And then it's like, you know, the car has it's like a car with a new idle, like the right hum. Mm-hmm. And then the lights come on and the person's like, I'm here. Where were they? I don't know. But then all of a sudden they're not doing this. They want to tell you their whole life story. And it's so fabulous. So I tell them, the patient who is in pain or having an anxiety attack, and I tell this to people all the time, I can't see you today. I'll see you in 2 days. In the meantime, you do this opening exploration, enjoyable exploration, using your sit bones almost as ball bearings that you can kind of like, where am I in there? Find your natural inner serpent that will have you start to unwind everything. And then the breathing all the way down to the pelvic floor, and if not the feet, you know, if you, with the extended exhale. But really, it's about attention. Like, the minute you start to connect your attention to your physiology, it starts to wake up. It's like, it's a magical thing. It's just how osteopathy works. That, you know, people say it's magic. What did you do? I just paid attention, honestly. And now we know. The neuroscience shows, and I love how it's summarized by Dr. Dan Siegel. He's done a lot of research in mindfulness, and he's a clinical professor at UCLA in psychiatry, and he says, if you get nothing else from this this live that we're doing today, where attention goes, neural firing flows and neural wiring grows.
Oh, nice.
Attention is the key to neuroplasticity. We're actually regrowing the body to be online, like awake, instead of this gradual retreat and kind of like really the body goes into a dormant state. When I connect with people who are depressed, it's like I can't feel them in there. They're hiding in there. It's like their body's a shell and their spirit's in there in this little ball. So the spirit, or the aliveness of us, the mystery part, actually wants to come out and inhabit every cell and then extend out from the body and interconnect with others and the earth, and that's the medicine. Like that state is where all of our physiologic functions kind of kick into a restorative capacity, and we heal automatically in that state. Like there's just about nothing we can't resolve. Well, there are things, you know. And as a doctor, I like to be the person in service of the person who's doing their work, and then they need help over a certain piece. But they're not going to just sort of check out and not do this basic, necessary, enjoyable, like they're not going to take life and opt in. They want you to draw them out. And it's not that I'm unwilling to do it if it's necessary, but it's typically not what has people grow the muscle of coming out and being able to like restore once they've been collapsed by something like a life event or a pandemic. And then they go dormant. And then, we'd all love to see each other not suffering. And yet we all also need to be able or get to work it so that we learn to resource ourselves and grow our skill sets, right?
Yeah, there has to be some input from self.
Well, it's just a way we show ourselves what we're made of. It's like a relationship we have with ourselves. We want to be in agency and we want to be in resource, and what we all really want to be. I haven't really yet met a person who isn't fundamentally at some level wanting to be in service of others, right? But if you can, and that's what really feeds our soul, right? Showing up and giving, showing up and being able to provide and, love out. But the person who's stuck in here, they don't have that. That's part of that Maslow's hierarchy of needs idea. Like if you're in a survival state, you're not in a state where you can be expected to be thoughtful of others or feel generous or. So our job is to resource for ourselves so that we can show up in the way that we want to for other people. It's not just about surviving, it's about thriving. I have another thing, unless you have a question.
So go for it.
All right. So here we are. The patient is, they call me my sciatica. I can't tell you, right? Sciatica. Sciatica is a neuroendocrine issue unless proven otherwise.
All right.
You're stressed, your back was triggered. You think it's a mechanical problem. I'm sure it's compounded by your not even having a clue of how to use your chair to heal yourself, like how to do this fun thing in your office chair. And oh, by the way, you could even use it for fitness and boosting your energy so that by the end of the day, you actually feel great and you can accept that dinner invitation or whatever. Right. Sciatica is an neuroendocrine issue. That means blown out nervous system, right? Neuro, I'm in fight or flight. Oh, my sciatica is acting up. Endocrine, oh, that's adrenal, thyroid, pituitary, that whole axis of hormone communication. So sciatica is a neuroendocrine issue. I have them work with their setting, and then the second thing was doing the breathing, which is it all feels actually really, really good, right? And then the third thing is drinking some water, because we will directly, if we can bolus even like a 500 cc, or let's say, here's my smoothie, like half this jar, or just a few sips if that's all you can do, is to get those kidneys to wake up a little bit out of that spasm. So those three things, and then I like putting the tongue on the roof of the mouth is a big piece too, because that actually recapitulates the action of breastfeeding. It's one of the most inherently self-soothing things we can possibly do, and most of us, I would say more than half of my patients, at least half, have some kind of tongue-palate dissociation that's weighing into their inability to regulate their nervous system.
What do? You put the tongue, the whole tongue, as best you can, at the top of your mouth.
The whole tongue across the roof of the mouth. Ideally, maybe a pinky's width from the front of the teeth, because there's a natural cave up there where it fits. And then in the posterior part, like when I do this,
yeah,
and I suction, I can get almost a whole finger in the divot that's created when the muscle goes up. Right? So there's a contact of the posterior, the back of the tongue, posterior, up to the soft palate. That's cranial nerve 10. There's a whole innervation back here of other nerves too that have to do with soothing. Glossopharyngeal is the other big one, probably. Some of the facial nerve, some of the trigeminal nerve. But mostly the vagal pathway, which we know mediates most of the body's ability. Right.
But can everybody do that, Michelle?
No.
Structurally, everybody. I don't think I can. I don't think I can get my whole tongue along the top of my palate.
Exactly.
50% of it sits there with a lot of effort.
Yeah, exactly. So part of that is the tissues have kind of probably shortened over time. Some of it's from sitting postures. You want to go back and watch the tongue video that we did a couple days ago, because we had a tongue trainer specialist, orofacial myologist, come on, and we explained. Yeah, we explored some of the ways that to troubleshoot the different scenarios. Okay. If a person hasn't been breastfed, their face probably didn't develop for the tongue to really seat there properly. Can I ask you that personal question on live? Do you know if you were breastfed and for how long?
Yes, I was. I have no idea for how long.
Well, let's find out. I want to know. I want to know, and then remember. I think in like tribal times or indigenous times, it was a roughly 3-year breastfeeding window that was optimal for full facial development. Because when the tongue is trained, right, it's quite a strong suction that the baby does to be able to get the milk out. What happens is the tongue gets very strong in the northward direction, such that every time we swallow, there's a pound of pressure sending a wave throughout the skull. And then the other thing is that when the tongue, I wasn't breastfed, by the way, so I'm always managing this oversized tongue that developed outside of the palate. And I also had to do some work to open my palate osteopathically. That's one of the things I've been working on for quite a while. When the tongue, like, now I can get it most of the way up. See these little...
Yeah.
Like I try to get these little caves on either side of the midline to get it, know that I'm really suctioning it up there. If it's not there and I swallow, the masseter muscles, the cheek muscles, are really strong. And they're going in without a tongue to oppose their force. And then the face starts to get narrow and the palate will go up into that kind of...
A-line.
Yeah, you've seen probably quite a few people with these really crowded, high-arched palates, and they couldn't contact the roof of their mouth with their tongue if their life depended on it. And then it could even go further, and you'll start to see big lumps of bone accumulate because there's no motion there. Right? It's the motion that shapes the joints. There's no subtle ability for those sutures to flex a little bit, and then you have... So if I look in a person's mouth and I see the toruses, torus palatini, I'm like, oh, we got to get that sagittal suture moving again, and other seams between the bones. And then I want to give you all sort of this ray of hope here with the unlocking of the cranium and the sacrum and the general balancing of the body, much of which you can do by yourself, which is what this whole study group is about, you can begin to render your structure moldable, right? Part of it is getting the nervous system to back off of this clenchy place and start to open up the ability of the body to be more fluid, less gripped and defended, more fluid, more open. And then we can use very basic practices like the way we sit, the way we walk, this breathing bit, the tongue on the palate, to begin to reshape our anatomy. And it is profound. Now, how quickly it can happen even in advanced stage. We think of ourselves as solid beings, but we are not. Like you look at an atom, there's nothing. There's like 99.999% space and a little bit of compressed information. And then we know that we have this idea of how matter behaves that sort of follows the rules in the narrow perspective of our day-to-day life. Quite a bit more is possible. That's what quantum theory explains. That's what osteopathy has tapped, and all of the esoteric practices of working with energy from all different lineages around the world for thousands of years. So this is very basic stuff, nothing new. And the other thing about it is your body already knows. So you're not, like I just said the word esoteric as if it's so sophisticated. No, we're getting super, 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 super back to basics. And practically, your body knows this so innately on a cellular level. Your mind may take a little while to catch up, but barely, sometimes just hinting in a direction, and your body will start to wake up its cell memory of these innate behaviors, like riding a bicycle. It already knows how to do this. You just got to get your mind out of the way and give a little bit of support with your conscious awareness attention so the thing can wake up and do what it's always trying to do, right? We're always body's naturally always moving toward healthy regulated states, if not for barriers. So, any questions at that point?
No, I got it. Yeah.
I'm talking to a doctor here, folks, so we're used to going really, really fast.
I think anybody could follow it.
You do?
Yeah, I mean,
good.
Yeah.
I hope so. I think so.
Well, I mean, there were maybe some muscle names and stuff, but you can work it out.
But I always want to teach people the terms, and then I'm going to use the medical term and the non-medical term all the time. So a lot of physicians, they don't remember the medical terms either for some of the things we're talking about.
Yeah.
We use them every day. So it's just good to give multiple names, all the common names and the scientific name for things, so that we all begin to have a little bit more literacy with whatever. We can look up anything now. It's helpful to understand terms. So, the hormones.
Anxiety, hormones, and sciatica.
Hormones. What was the last one?
Sciatica. You did the
sciatica. We got sciatica.
Uh-huh.
Anxiety we kind of covered. And now I'm going to talk specifically to hormones.
Okay.
All right. So this kidney adrenal business, right? We kind of have an idea that in stress, the kidneys pucker and they're very intimate with the adrenal gland. Runs our adrenaline. It's a little walnut-shaped gland that sits on top of the kidney. I don't have an example of a walnut. I'm going to have to get a walnut for future. Put a walnut in my props box. And that gland is responsible for what happens hormonally in the body. It's like the air traffic controller.
Uh-huh.
It's first alert. If you remember from our anatomy books, it has a direct pathway to the brain. It doesn't synapse along the way. It's like, boom, we react. We get our hand away from the flame before we even know it's hot. So this little mechanism can be triggered very quickly. It's not conscious. And the minute it does, the body is, thankfully, able to mobilize in our defense. So what does it do at that point? It is, the interesting thing is the adrenal cortex, the outer part of it, has 3 layers. Remember learning that in biochemistry?
Mm-hmm.
The 3 layers are the mineral corticoids, the glucocorticoids, and then the sex hormones. So if the body is busy doing adrenaline, and if then it mobilizes one of the layers of the cortex to make cortisol, that's the glucocorticoid section of the, I need some little diagrams probably.
Yeah.
But the sex hormones goes on the back burner. You don't need to reproduce when you're running from the lion.
Right.
So that's not a problem in a short period of time. But if the lion doesn't go away and we're living in this constant state of anxiety, you will have problems with your levels of sex hormones. And I'm talking about, young people. I'm talking about girls, early in their menstrual cycles, having PMS symptoms right out of the gate. That is a sign of stress. That doesn't need to be band-aided with Midol and SSRIs or, serotonin drugs or Paxil or whatever. And not to say you can't use those things temporarily in a pinch if things aren't good. Their underlying cause is their stress hormone is dominating their sex hormone. So sometimes I'll just write PMS in the chart. That's code for adrenal dysfunction or dysregulation of the nervous system, which we barely have ICD-10 codes for, right? I think we do have some dysautonomia, but those are applied to more like extreme conditions. It's really interesting. This whole very basic mechanism barely has languaging for it in the medical world.
Yeah.
And then people, when they go on these, imagine your patient who stays in adrenal activation for years. Their adrenal glands are tired. They're less responsive. They don't tolerate stress well. They don't bounce back well after a procedure, that sort of thing. They're spent. They may not even have enough ability to mobilize the cortisol they need to run their life. So they might be in chronic fatigue. They also, maybe they're hungry and cold all the time because they don't have sugar to burn. They're actually running low. Their mitochondria aren't supported. And then, of course, the person with high cortisol in the meantime is the brain saying, oh, we need to conserve all resources because we don't know what's going to happen next. Well, that's an element of the weight gain piece, obviously. Mm-hmm. If we run high cortisol, we're going to start to pack it on in the kind of, like truncal area.
Yeah.
So PMS, which is obviously headaches, irritability, bloating, cramps, all of those are red flags. Oh, your cortisol is high, your sex hormones are low. There are all sorts of wonderful ways to offset that with herbs, but rather than think, oh, I need to add something, I look around and go, what part of this neural dysregulation can I get a hold of myself? Mm-hmm. Can I work with my sitting and my breathing and my literally, so the practices are the sitting and the breathing have us start to connect. I'm going to always come back to this connection theme, which is kind of the overarching theme of everything. The body being able to resource itself in the context of a much bigger world. Mm-hmm. Being able to resonate, to feel the earth, to sense nature, to feel as though they're a part of it, as though all of life is a symphony, and we're also an instrument that participates in the symphony, but we're in tune with everything, as opposed to separate, right? When we're in a panic attack, we're actually, or just an anxiety state, we have this perception of separate, which compounds itself. The more separate you feel, the more separate you feel. And so if we can't go, oh, I'm feeling separate, I'm under-resourced, how do I come out? What we can do then is take something from the outside to get us at least within the range of tolerance to where we have agency and can start making choices about how we sit or how we breathe or how we maybe restructure our day to do something that lifts our heart. How much of the time are we I have to just tough through this, it's really important, and forget, that I might enjoy my day or do some play or take a little break, or make sure I take that vacation, make sure I make time to connect with my family, make sure I have personal time to connect with myself. And so the connection thing, yes, there's a bit that we do in relation to ourselves. I think it does kind of start with us connect to body connects to earth, and then we're able to connect with others. But it can also go the other way around. If we have a lost person, we reach out to that person. Maybe we try to have some way of physically connecting with the body to anchor it. Or, if a person's open to body work, maybe they get a massage. The skin is part of the nervous system. You directly regulate the nervous system. The skin is actually a derivative of neuroectoderm on an embryologic level. So touch is quite literally a direct way to soothe the nervous system and help a person get into a regulated state. It's all about staying in the window of tolerance, right? It's all about staying in, but it's also kind of about going out. Because going out is not terrible at all. We're always going to be overstepping our bounds a little bit, almost in a way to define them. Oh, here's my limit. I'm going to stretch a little bit. Oop, I went over. You've defined your limit, and you've also given yourself an opportunity to possibly stretch a little bit, to resource a little bit more deeply so that you can expand your ability you can just grow, right? You can expand your ability to manage intensity. You can develop more resilience, and then that gives you a little bit more of a buffer to be a little bit more bold in the world. Oh, I can go out because I know if the shit hits the fan or whatever, that I can actually work with myself, stay present, do my breathing, feel my feet, make sure my tongue's on my palate, maybe stimulate my skin a little bit. What were you going to say?
And get a massage.
Get a massage, have someone sit on you. I've occasionally done that. I had this thing with my boyfriend for a while where I just wasn't sleeping well. And we have different bedrooms, and I would text him and I'd say, we were calling it, it's like, will you come up and squish me? And he's like a big guy, and he'd come up and he'd just put his whole body. It was really goofy and fun. And he would just crush me. And it was pretty great. I would just turn it. It was like a sedative. I'd ask for like a few minutes of crushing before I wanted to actually sleep, but it was just so comfortable. It's like my body just really craved that feeling in the evenings for a little while, and then I was done with that piece. So I was paying attention. I was like, oh, my body, what does it feel like? Oh, I really want to be squashed right now. And then I, moved on to something else. I moved on to having some hot tea or doing a little bit of meditation or flow movement in the bed. Like, I'm always practicing with this. What if I was actually a fluid? And what if I could recruit every cell in my body from head to toe with everything I do? And now that I'm lying in bed and I'm horizontal, can I is it a little easier without gravity that I can actually just check in and see, can I really feel everything? And then, oh my goodness, some things the body will just start to
release
do its own thing. It'll just very spontaneously start to go into this self-healing. It's a great way to set up your sleep. Because whatever state you set, including a deep intentional breath, has the potential to stay all night. Like, you set a setting and then I've woken up in the same way. Like, oh, I'm still doing this deep, slow, rhythmic breathing. And just imagine what a boost that would be, how much more deeply you could actually sleep, and how much more resource you would have the next day to explore your practices even more deeply and then have more fun. Because at the end of the day, that's what everything's about, as far as I'm concerned. The body. I think I have a slide where I grabbed a study that said we learn 400 times faster when we're enjoying ourselves.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
neural wiring.
Yeah, you're more alert, you're more in tune, you're grabbing at the fun. Absolutely.
Yeah. It might have been 20 times. I'll have to find the statistic. I'm not so one for capturing exact numbers most of the time, but you get the general idea. Valerie is watching from France. How wonderful. This is so fun. Yeah. I find that anyway, we'll get to go on, and nobody's asking any questions, you guys. I want you to think of questions, everyone who's still watching, even though we're complete now, because I can't believe we're already been.
Yeah, you've covered everything. Well done.
Yeah. Well, thanks. It's not about me being awesome, you guys. It's about me being excited for you to feel amazing and go out and play with these skills and teach them to other people. It's all what the body's desperate to do. It all just feels so wonderful. It's all about enjoyment. I think my recent theme of my work, my teaching, was that healing yourself isn't an obligation. It's not like go do all the right things so you'll be healthy. It's like a beautiful invitation to deepen your relationship with your body and enjoy your life. That's the whole point of being here. So let's see. Usually there would be so there's nothing per se. I know what we will do. You and I can circle back. I would love to have you go and just notice what parts of the things that I've said are actually practical to apply clinically. And I'd be really curious to hear about.
I like the anxiety one. I'll be a little cautious to jump on somebody. I certainly would ask them first and push them. Okay. I would go a little gingerly with that. I definitely, because I see a whole heap of allergies, sinus, rhinitis, head congestion, all that good stuff. So I would certainly want to look into the Russians' nasal action.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna get you some. I'm gonna blow your mind with that. I'll actually directly email you some of those things, but I'm gonna put Buteyko information in the comments down below for people watching, and a YouTube video of the breathing technique. And then at some point, Dr. Ingrid Solomon, osteopathic medical doctor in Southern Florida, and I will circle back, because certainly there'll be topics that come up from applying what we talked about. And then for everybody, I hope you come back here and bring your questions and wins and gains and insights, and know that I'm working on a course where I'll just go through all of these things systematically from A to Z with slides and make it really fun. And I actually just did this for a group of 30 doctors, but I want to recreate the class for every single person, and it's not going to be fancy or expensive or anything. So keep an eye out for that, and I think we're good. I'm really just so grateful for you coming on.
Thank you for having me, Michelle. It was wonderful to see you.
There's certain people that I blossom a little bit more around, and I love you. We just had such a brilliant, wonderful connection.
Lovely.
And so I can be myself around people, some people more than others. And you're definitely one of the people who has me at ease and has me go right into my play channel, which, by the way, is my native channel.
It is your native channel. It's the channel we love.
All right, so come back and play, everyone, and we'll see you soon. Thanks for joining. Ciao, ciao.
Ciao.